This episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks brought to you by Lenovo.
Hey, how'd you like that? That was fancy. That's what you call a little Google Plus Hangout wizardry there, wasn't it? Yeah, we're like super pro. Hey, Dave Altavilla for Hot Hardware here. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of 2.5 Geeks. And we've actually got a lot more than just 2.5 Geeks. We've got, heck, I think we've got maybe 3.5 solid. I don't know. I'll be the half geek today, but we've got Marco with us today as usual, and we've got Chris and Brittany Getting, new to the team, fairly new to the team, husband and wife dynamic duo. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good.
We're doing good. We're doing good, and it's great to have you guys with us. We figured we'd mix it up today, and we've got a foursome instead of a 2.5-some, so that's a beautiful thing. Marco, you're smiling over there. You've got some wisecrack remark to say.
Oh, yeah. I've already messed up the podcast twice, in case you didn't notice. I had audio playing from the stream, and my phone already rang. So I'm on a roll today. Yeah. I should apologize in advance. I have to break Chris and Brittany in, so I'll probably be extra wisecracking today.
That's okay, as we turn down the volume on our phones, too.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. You know, it's just one of those things, Marco. You have to do it. It wouldn't be a webcast without some sort of electronic interruption.
I agree.
That's okay. That's all right. We're
Let's
not
just
perfect.
hope our dog doesn't decide the neighbors are doing something sketchy.
Yeah.
Start
Right.
barking at all.
And the dog's name is Freckles?
Freckles.
Freckles the
Yeah.
Saint Bernard.
Yeah, Saint Bernard Great Dane mix.
Wow. We need to have a mascot on the show, so Freckles may have to make an appearance at some point.
Okay.
That works.
But we had a lot to talk about, a lot to cover this week. We've been away for a little bit, and it's because we've been in a frenzy of reviewing high-end products. Lots of product releases from folks like NVIDIA, Lenovo, Intel, stuff just flowing in. Usually, you know, late spring into early summer, we chill out a little bit around here, and you know, it's the slower months. But it's like Q1 just rolled into Q2, and we're still jamming. And Marco and I we're both trying to catch our breath. And Chris, we keep sending you guys boxes, and
Right?
it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
not
No rest for the weary, as they say, but it's a good thing. So let's dive in. We've got a ton to talk about, and I guess top of mind for everybody these days, it seems, at least if you're a PC enthusiast or in the computing space at all, and you know you care about this sort of stuff, which of course we all do very passionately. NVIDIA launched the GeForce GTX 1080 and 1070. Marco was lucky enough to get a couple of those cards in. He was at the launch. He's been playing around with the new hardware. We've got a review up live, so check that out. Marco, tell us about these new big bad GPUs from NVIDIA and your thoughts, please.
I will. So, first of all, I'm monitoring comments on the YouTube channel. If anybody's watching live and has questions you want me to answer, let me know. I will try to get to them during the segment. So here is the bad boy. Here's the GTX 1080. I did not get a 1070 yet. That's coming June 10th. So the specs were just released, but the cards are not in hand just yet. So this is the bad boy, and it is a true next generation GPU finally, after years of being stuck at 28 nanometer. This Pascal, the GP104 GPU on this card, is produced on TSMC's 16 nanometer FinFET process. So in addition to a new architecture, new manufacturing process, and what we end up with is an extremely efficient, high-performance card with a GPU that's actually smaller than the GTX 980, not 980 Ti. 7.2 billion transistor chip, that's a little smaller than GTX 980, but outperforms the Titan X. So this guy has 2,560 CUDA cores arranged in 4 GPCs, 8 gigs, I should say, of GDDR5X memory. That's new memory from Micron that runs at an effective speed of 10 gigabits per second, connected to the GPU on a 256-bit interface for 320 gigs of available memory bandwidth. Then you add all of the cool stuff that NVIDIA already offered, and you end up with a killer graphics card. Launch price $699 for the Founders Edition, but pricing is actually supposed to start at $599 for partner boards and go on up from there.
Huh. I'm trying to share this out, but Google is not cooperating. Google Hangouts, so I'm getting black screens. I'm sure you guys saw that. Sorry about that. We are a dark void of nothingness here, honest.
It's okay. You can make up for it by sending one of those my way.
That's what it is. The GPU gods are angry that Chris doesn't have one.
It's true.
So Marco, you're
Yes.
you're saying this thing is pretty powerful. It is on a new process. What do you see in terms of efficiency? I guess performance per watt. I guess what's the real hook with this card beyond the fact that it's the fastest thing on the planet right now for a single GPU?
So I mean that's the real hook. That's what gamers want, obviously, is the fastest card on the planet. But there's so much going on here. So this GPU, out of box, base clock is over 1.6 gigahertz, right? Actually, let me get that right. That might be the boost clock. So out of box, you're already talking much higher clock speeds than previous generation. I'm just jumping to the specs. So yeah, we're looking at a 1607 base clock with a 1733 boost clock right out of the box, so hundreds of megahertz faster than the previous gen. And if you look at the power charts, I did overclocking and power consumption. You'll see I was able to overclock it to over 2.1 gigahertz, which is insane versus any previous gen GPU. And power consumption under load, this card only, well, this is the whole system. So the card itself has 180 watt TDP, but the whole system pulled 329 watts. The next closest card, the Titan X, which was slower, the system pulled almost 400 watts, 398. So you're talking huge 70 watt difference. The card only has a single power connector on it. You know, we're used to seeing high-end cards with 2, 3 8-pin power connectors. This has just one. Really, across the board, perhaps it's because NVIDIA's first out of the gate was 16 nanometer. We can't really say until we see more cards and what AMD has. But across the board, you're talking lower power, higher performance. It's a new architecture with new features. There's something called simultaneous multi-projection that will help VR. The card can render 2 different projections in a single pass without having to duplicate any geometry, so it saves on bandwidth and compute. There's new compression, so even though it has more memory bandwidth, it utilizes it more efficiently. Pascal itself, the way the CUDA cores are arranged, is just more efficient than Maxwell, so it's sort of across the board better. There's really the only negative that you can point to in this launch, in my opinion, is the confusion with the Founders Edition naming. Lots of people saw Founders Edition at $699 and said, oh, I wonder what reference cards are going to cost. The Founders Edition is the reference card. NVIDIA just changed the name because the new plan is to sell this card throughout the life of the product. It used to be the reference cards came first, partners came in with custom cards, and then the reference designs kind of dwindled off. Because this uses premium materials throughout, NVIDIA wants to sell it basically until it's EOL, and to do that and make it profitable, it kind of had to up the price a little bit. So it's a little confusing, but it is what it is. It's a killer card for $699. I mean, it's faster than Titan X, which is over $1,000 for $699.
You know what's interesting about this launch is that we've talked about how NVIDIA and AMD have been stuck in this 28 nanometer node for a long time, and I think GPUs as a silicon architecture are tricky. They're large chips. They're not particularly complex chips. They have a bunch of scaled engines, all the same, just big massive parallel engines on board. But they're tricky. They're sort of bleeding edge semiconductor technology that doesn't necessarily migrate as easily as, say, a standard memory structure or other sorts of logic structures like you see in x86 processors. These are highly specialized chips, and they take a lot to scale. When you jump to 16 nanometer, now you're talking orders of magnitude. Power efficiency, everything you get with that geometry die shrink, faster clock speeds as a result of it. What's your gut in terms of how much of this architecture is just gaining from die shrink versus how much of it's new? And I mean, I know you went down into the brain twister deep dive with NVIDIA on this thing. How much of that logic on that chip is new IP that's given us that performance boost versus just a die shrink?
Okay, I got to break this down into 3 steps here. So if you look at like DirectX 11 existing games, I think most of the gains are from the clock, the CUDA core arrangement, and the shrink to 16 nanometer. If you look at DX12 performance, it does have asynchronous compute. It's not the same implementation as AMD, but it is better suited, it appears, for DX12 titles. I would bet the farm there's a lot more performance to come with future driver updates, because I mean this is the first Pascal desktop GPU. I would bet the farm NVIDIA is going to wring more performance out of it. In terms of power, it's probably mostly the shrink. The Maxwell was pretty freaking pretty efficient. Now the other wrinkle though is VR and multi-monitor setups. That the simultaneous multi-projection, I think, could really help in VR applications, because you're not duplicating any any geometry, and it can do stereo in a single pass. So once that gets fully leveraged, I think it might be the king of virtual reality setups. But it all has to play out. On paper, it looks like just a home run across the board.
Chris, Brittany, do you guys think you'll be diving into one of these bad boys sometime soon? Are you jonesing for one?
Would absolutely love to. Yeah. I got a question on the overclocking. Considering it's only got a single 8-pin, how much of your overclocking limitation do you think was limited by power versus other factors? I mean, a reference card with 2, 3 8-pin connectors, are we going to see even more out of it?
So I think that actually is going to be the overclocking limit. There's been some scuttlebutt, people that couldn't hit 2.1 because of a power limit. I think I have the data. Maybe I didn't show it in the graph. So if I have the data. It's not perfect. My power percentage does show it hitting that. So I tuned the slider to 120% of of the reference power envelope, and I do hit that while overclocking. But I personally was able to hit over 2.1. I watched multiple demos while meeting with NVIDIA of the same reference cards boosting over 2.1. And if what they told us was correct, these cards came out of the package, and literally 3 hours earlier they did the overclocking. It was just like, let's see if we can do it. And I don't know if you guys will remember this. Hopefully some readers saw it. It's up on the YouTube channel now. I shot some video of a demo of Doom running Vulkan on the cards. Yep. And there was also another demo. I'm not sure if I shot video, but we did have a news article up showing an epic demo of characters. And again, the cards boosted to 2.1. That all happened live in front of like hundreds of people. So NVIDIA wasn't blowing smoke. There's some people that could not hit 2.1 with their samples. I don't know what the answer is. It could just, you're talking a couple of voltage, a fraction of a voltage from the power supply could affect that power envelope enough to not hit 2.1. But I think partners are going to come out with cards with additional power connectors and beefier heat sinks. I would not. So I actually heard a rumor there's going to be a card clocked at 2.5 gigahertz. I don't know if it's true, but I heard the rumor. That would be insane. We'll see.
Hey, just a quick note. I am getting the occasional reverb. So if someone's got your volume up, try and tweak it a little bit lower. I don't know if it's you, Marco, because it does seem to sound when you're talking. But
all right, I just lowered it, so hopefully that's better.
We lowered it well.
Yep.
Could be Google Hangouts just messing with you too. They like to do that, those Googlers.
Yes.
Hey, Brittany, do you game?
I do, actually. I'm looking forward to Battlefield 1 coming out, so that seems like it's going to be a real winner.
Because you are a history buff, right?
I am, yeah. And while the game isn't, as we pointed out on hothardware.com in our article, it's not 100% accurate. I mean, it wouldn't be a fun game if it was. Very few people really truly want to play a 100% historically accurate game.
Especially not World War I.
Yeah, especially World War I.
It would just be depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah, World War I probably wasn't a lot of fun, right?
But yeah, I do enjoy gaming. It's something I started doing with my dad actually many eons ago. So.
Wow, awesome, awesome, good to know. So let's move along to something more on the mobile side, shall we? And Marco, you're going to keep us posted on the 1070, which draws near as well, before we move on, actually.
So
right?
the launch, it's supposed to be available June 10th. I would assume reviews are either going to come on June 10th or slightly before. I'm not sure yet.
Okay, all right. So that could be a really cool card, because now you're talking price performance even better. $379 for Founders, $359 for or something. I don't know. Tell me what the prices are.
It was in that range. I think it might have been $399 for the Founders. I don't remember, but that card is going to sell out as soon as it hits store shelves. So Titan X Performance sub $400. Every single one of those is going to sell.
Which just blows me away. Titan X, and we haven't moved on yet. Yes, Titan X, $1,000, right? Previously.
Well, the Titan X, though, it also has the double precision performance for better compute and 12 gigs of RAM on it.
Right.
It's a premium product that's not just about gaming, but yeah, if you
was the Titan X double precision? I thought they trimmed that out.
You know, I might be wrong. There's something on the compute side that was better. If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I remember the GPU side was tweaked up a little bit, something on it. And, you know, that's what's funny. Yeah, it's 12 gig of frame buffer on there. You're only going to get 8 gig of frame buffer on the GTX 1070. Only. You know, which is actually, it's impressive, because, you know, when you look at 4K gaming and what AMD's got to offer there, you do run into a little bit of a limit with, you know, a 4 gig frame buffer. You start to max that out at 4K gaming when you start turning up, you know, all the sliders. The GPU can handle it, but it's, I don't care what AMD says, right, guys? I mean, what do you think, Mark? You're starved a little bit at certain settings with a 4 gig frame buffer.
Yeah, as of today, 4 gig is I would consider the bare minimum. If you want to game at 4K or multi-monitors, with the latest games with the eye candy turned up, 4 gig is pushing it at this point.
Yeah.
For an enthusiast gaming PC, for an enthusiast system, for a high-end system.
Yeah, and certainly 4K is not the norm. I mean, I wonder what the percentages are of 4K gamers in the audience, but versus, you know, QHD or what have you. Anyways, let's move on. Finally, okay. Lenovo's ThinkPad X1 Yoga is a refresh of the X1 Carbon, sort of, but yoga-ized, as you might guess by the name, and yoga being Lenovo's fully articulating hinge, right, Chris? Chris took a look at this beast, and it is refreshed with lots of other things like Intel Skylake, I believe. Chris, what did you think? And I know you're a ThinkPad user from days gone by. How does it stack up versus Lenovo's very successful lineage with the ThinkPad family?
Right. So if you've ever used a ThinkPad ever, you're pretty much looking at the same laptop. Their design language hasn't changed much at all. It does have the nice carbon enclosure on it, which gives a little softer touch than the older materials, and it's definitely a lot lighter than the bricks that we used to heft around with those, which is very nice. So basically what they've done here is they have taken that X1 Carbon, which again, very thin, very light, ultra portable, and then they've merged it with their really smaller Yoga ThinkPad, which didn't previously have the carbon enclosure. So they've added that Yoga hinge to the Carbon to basically let it work however you need it to. If you want to do presentations, it's very handy to flip up as a stand. You can turn it around, use it as a tablet. It does have the integrated ThinkPad Pen Pro, which is the stylus that just slots right into the side of it near the power button, pops out very easily, and we found the handwriting recognition to work exceptionally well.
Actually worked really well.
Yeah, so you can carry it around as a tablet and basically use the pen to control all of your interface. You know, you can click on a field and just write in what you want, so you don't have to mess with the on-screen keyboard or any of that.
I will say, just having also, I was playing around with it a little bit too. If you do try to, you know, bend it, I guess, in the downward dog position or whatever yoga position that they're going for, and try to use it as a tablet, if you have very small hands like I do, it can be a little bit challenging. to try to maneuver it and hold it and keep everything intact. So if someone is looking at purchasing this for someone like myself who has very tiny hands, it might be a little bit difficult for that person to maneuver.
Yeah,
right. A 14-inch tablet is a little bit unwieldy no matter who you are. That's definitely not the primary use case for this.
Definitely.
It's a fantastic, fantastic laptop. It's going to be up to you. It's the little bit of price premium that's carried over the 4th gen X1 Carbon is worth it for you to use that extra tablet and pen functionality. But for graphic designers or anyone who's going to be taking notes by hand, wants to draw diagrams, it's absolutely worth the extra bit of investment.
Yeah, it's funny. I always look at tablet mode with these kind of things. These can, what's technically a convertible, but it's really a full-size laptop, obviously, with a convertible hinge. Yeah, a 14-inch tablet is just plain unwieldy no matter how you slice it, even if it is, like 2.8 pounds or something, I think is what this thing is.
Yeah, it's very light to hold.
But what's interesting to me is, and what I always like about that hinge style, and I think it should be, frankly, more default across notebooks on the market these days, especially the ultralights, is you get this infinite swing of display angle.
Yeah.
I'm the type of guy, and I've said this in a previous webcast, I like to have my laptop in the kitchen. I'll be streaming some music, making some dinner, pulling up something on the web. Of course, I'm working all the time, which is ridiculous, but standing over it on a counter, I like to be able to really swing that panel up, way open so I can see it better. It's got a better angle from standing over it.
I will say for that use case, the stand mode is even better because then your keyboard's out of the way. You don't have to worry about dropping food as you're cooking on it or anything like that.
Something like that, yeah, definitely.
Another nice thing they do with the keyboard when it is flipped around into the stand or tablet mode is the bottom of the keyboard, the base, actually lifts up and becomes level with the top of the keys. So you're not going to be pressing anything.
Huh. So it actually, something protrudes inside the keyboard to...
Right, it's like a frame around the keys lifts up and just kind of becomes flush with the keys, and you can't press them at all. So basically the whole keyboard and touchpad area becomes disabled except for the fingerprint reader.
Oh wow, that's actually a cool little feature. So that's a mechanical... I knew I'm going to present this out again to everybody so you can take a look at it. I knew they, disabled the keyboard in tablet mode or whatever, but there's actually a mechanical stop to keep you from mashing the keys too. That's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what do you think? I mean, thin, light. Oh, there's the pen there. Just barely can see that maybe. How is the performance on this thing? Does it get loud? Is it fast enough for this type of machine? What sort of compromises, I guess, are you making in a super thin and light flexible machine like this?
Right. So ours is backed with a i7-6500U, which is a dual-core processor. It does turbo up very nicely when it's used, though I did find there was some thermal throttling. So it'll go full bore for about a minute and then tack back down a bit, which isn't realistically going to be too much of an issue because unless you're doing long encodes or something on the processor, you're not going to keep it flat out. So it's very responsive. One note of performance on it is our model did come with a regular SATA solid-state drive, which I can't really believe I'm complaining about this, but if you're looking at a premium laptop these days, you really want the NVMe drives, which they do offer as an upgrade. I'm just kind of surprised that that's not standard fare for this model, because that would give you, 2-3 times the throughput on storage access.
Yeah, and you'll have to forgive me. I don't know. Can you guys hear the lovely lawn service outside my window?
No,
I don't hear it.
I can't. Can you hear our dog jingling?
No dogs
That's good.
jingling. And hopefully the lawn guys are not coming through on audio. Anyways, what was interesting is I was looking at battery life on this, and it's definitely on the softer side with this machine. You're talking about a QHD display, 2560 by 1440. Would maybe a good trade-off be, because you're going to save, and I wonder if they offer this config, maybe a 1080p screen with the NVMe drive. Get you a little bit better battery life. You're not lighting up as many pixels.
Certainly.
Bastard.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, even the i5, say the 6200U, isn't a bad proposition either, because again, it's basically the same dual-core processor. The i7 is just clocked higher at that point.
Right.
So you're not seeing a lot of performance versus, say, the XPS 13 we tested with the 6200U. Yeah, there's a little bit of gain, but how much are you going to, notice in real life versus the battery you're going to save by not topping out the processor quite as high?
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that. It is a higher end processor. I would probably save on the processor to get battery life. You're just not going to notice it as much. Yeah, so you had a high res screen plus the goosed up i7 there.
They spoiled me.
That would do it. And it's funny that's obviously the manufacturers when they send in review product, they don't send in the slow stuff, right? Usually.
Right. Yeah.
They want to send the fast stuff that lights up the benchmarks. Marco, is this your kind of machine, or are you a smaller guy? I know you like small machines. Is this small enough? Is this petite?
I would dig that machine. I do like them smaller, but that Yoga hinge design is what I would like. Like I carry a Surface because it's what I have here on hand, but I don't dig the 2-in-1 detachables. I like the clamshells that are also convertible. So yes, I do. But if they made like a beautiful 11.6-inch one with that kind of horsepower, I'd be all over it.
Yeah.
Which they do have the 12-inch ThinkPad Yoga.
Yeah.
But it's my understanding is it isn't quite as nice as the X1 Yoga.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I actually run an X1 Carbon. That's my daily driver. And I've had an XPS 15 around, and I haven't made the jump yet. And it's really just I've lived with the ThinkPad so long that it's just the XPS 15, which is a fabulously beautiful machine. That's like, oh my God, kind of quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm so comfortable with that Lenovo keyboard now that it's like I just can't rip myself from it. And kudos to Lenovo. That's the hook, man. With notebooks, it's just that typing experience is just right there. Good stuff. All right, we'll move on real quick and get to the next cool thing. And I'm just going to tease it because I don't know enough about it yet. I'm still testing. We actually, a little ways back in, let's see, the March time frame, I'm going to share this out. Boom. We took a look at the Intel Skull Canyon NUC, and NUC stands for Next Unit of Computing in Intel speak. They love those acronyms. But this is, as you can see with the skull on it, adorned on the front and blazoned there, is a gaming/performance targeted small form factor PC. How small, you ask? It is dang small. It's only an inch or two tall by, I don't know, maybe 6-8 inches wide. I wish I had the specs in front of me. I'm going to hold it up for you on camera right now, though. So
it's right on the last line of text above that pic. I think it was.
Oh, really?
The first paragraph.
I can't read and talk at the same time. You guys are
Oh,
crazy.
yeah, I forgot.
I think that's smaller than the 1080 you were just holding.
No, it's definitely smaller than the 1080.
It's 8.5 by 4.6 by 0.9. It's 0.9 inches thin. So there's the back. See if I can get the camera to focus. Come on, baby. That's the front. Sorry, that would be the front. This would be the back. And you can see you got a pair of USB 3, Ethernet. You've got HDMI. You've got mini display port on the front. You got an SD card reader, a couple more USB 3s, and of course front panel audio. And it is a bare bones device. So I'm going to try and, if I can do this carefully, I've already pulled off the bottom. You can get right in there and configure it how you like. We have got a Samsung 950 EVO M2 PCI Express NVMe drive right there, and 16 gig of DDR4 RAM. This is Skylake, and it is a cool little box. It comes with a Core i7 6770 HQ processor, which is quad-core, 8-thread. And I think its base clock is like 2.6. It boosts to 3.5. Onboard Iris 580 graphics, Intel Iris graphics 580. So it is the higher-end Iris graphics with 128, is it 128 meg DRAM, EDRAM on board? I'd have to look that up too. But it's got onboard EDRAM cache. It also uses, of course, system memory for frame buffer as well. But that extra bit of SRAM cache on board helps to speed up memory access there. It's just another tier of memory, cache memory. So we're going through the numbers now. It is, believe it or not, fairly quiet. You can get on it with a game and you'll hear the fans spin up, but it's not, obtrusive. It's not offensive. It is an interesting little box. I would put it, I would find a home for this thing probably in a media center in my living room, something like that. The other thing where it might be great, obviously, is a nice small form factor desktop in the office where you do need a little bit more juice. It is targeted at gamers, certainly, and performance enthusiasts, especially with the Skull brand, the Skull Canyon branding that Intel has, labeled for enthusiasts for so long. That logo. But there's going to be some caveats. This is integrated graphics, which these days with Intel is pretty potent still. But you're limited by the thermal constraints. What I've found so far is that at idle it probably sips down about 15, 16 watts just sitting there. When you kick it into high gear, it's about a 77 watt solution, 45 watt TDP processor. But it's interesting, it's certainly an exciting product. I think Intel will sell a lot of these. I think it's robust in certain applications. Are you going to throw this thing at 4K gaming? No, but I think you need to think about 1080p and back, maybe 720p with high image quality settings. We will have a review of it soon, so stick around for the benchmarks. What do you guys think about something like this? Marco, what's your thoughts? I know you got your hands on this for a little while at CES with me. Cool little machine.
So I love the form factor. I love the look. It seems like performance in everything except high-end gaming should be good if the specs sort of play out in real-world applications. Just as a interesting aside, sort of connected to this, my wife's system needed replacing. And I didn't have time to build something new, so I grabbed an old Zotac mini PC with a Core i7-4770R and put that in place of her giant tower that I had built her years ago. And, it's faster than what she had. She had a Core i7 2700K or 2600K that I built for her years ago. And, slap this machine in, and with the solid-state faster storage and more memory and the Haswell-based processor, this little tiny box is actually faster for her, and she's noticed it. So something like that, if you haven't experienced a new cutting-edge system with the latest hardware, I think most people will be shocked at how fast that little rig is.
Yeah.
Right. I'm looking at my mid-tower over here, wondering why I have that when things like the NUC exist.
Exactly.
Yeah, you think about just mainstream computing and how much of it this, a device like this can address.
Yeah.
You've got a quad core that spools up to 3.5 gigahertz. You've got 16 gig of DDR4 RAM in there, 2133 megahertz RAM, and you've got an NVMe SSD, this little gum stick thing. That just blows me away, the kind of bandwidth. That thing pushes 2.2 gigs a second read. And so now it's all in this tiny little box, whereas before, we had these big PCI Express cards that would drop into a slot. You needed a full, at least mini ATX size form factor to accommodate that kind of, bandwidth on the storage side.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, holy crap! It's amazing what they're fitting into that footprint now. But it's going to be interesting to see what folks do with this thing. I haven't explored overclocking with it yet. I think you can. I think it's only going to get louder. I probably wouldn't mess with it too much. I want to pull off there's torque screws. I'm pointing at the screen right now. I'm so Italian sometimes. There's actually little torque screws on the top here.
Yeah.
And I haven't got my Torx bit set out yet. I got to dig deep for that. I haven't seen it in a while. The bottom has regular Phillips head, but the top has Torx head screws all around. I want to get at the top so I can see, what you're getting to look at here is, the fan assembly, memory, and drive. you're not getting a look at the processor and all that setup. So I want to do a full teardown and show everybody that. That'll be interesting, I think. We'll iFix it kind of thing, this thing.
Airplane flying overhead.
Sorry, yeah,
Airplane.
So, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to take a look at how it stacks up. I think it'll blow the average laptop. It could blow the average laptop out of the water. And so when you get that kind of performance and you can snap it into a nice panel and or maybe bolt it up to a TV for 1080p gaming, could be kind of cool.
Definitely. Do we have any questions in the?
Yeah, did we get any questions in the chat, Marco? Was anybody chatting it up?
No, nothing yet. I'm going to go back right now. I was just going to the Facebook page, so you're asking me as I left the YouTube page.
Oh, sorry.
On the YouTube channel, nope, nothing going on yet.
Okay, Brittany's keeping you on your toes. Folks, ask questions.
She's good at that.
What's that?
So she's good at that.
She's good at that, as says the husband. Yes. I know that drill myself.
Let's just say this wasn't nearly as clean about half an hour ago.
Is this Chris's home office?
This is Christopher's domain, yeah.
Excellent. The man den.
Yeah.
Actually, it is pretty clean.
My office is hiding behind there.
Yeah, it is pretty clean.
Boxes everywhere.
It's true.
I was beginning to wonder if you were okay there, Chris, but now that explains it. You are okay. Marco, let's move on one more time and talk about VR before we wrap this thing up. You have strapped on the HTC Vive for a mighty long time, so long that you got a little queasy after being out of touch with reality. At least that's what you told me. What do you think about this, and should everybody get one?
Tough question. I've actually been using the Vive on and off throughout its development cycle. It's basically every GPU briefing you go to or we went to over the last couple of years, there was either a Rift or a Vive there in some form, as they were being developed to try out and experiment with. So in the very beginning, I was skeptical because before the GPU makers incorporated asynchronous time warp into their software, and before the screens were 90 hertz, and before the optics were optimized, and before the headsets fit properly and weren't so quite as heavy, I actually would get woozy right away and get that sort of motion sickness. But it progressively got better. Now with the Vive, now through the development cycle, I kind of always thought the Vive was a little better experience than the Rift. That seems to be the consensus, but some people prefer, the Rift's headset design, the way that earphones are integrated. I still have to play with the retail Rift to really form an opinion. Now, getting the Vive in-house and playing with it with multiple GPUs and just playing a ton of software and just not having the pressures of being in a time-limited briefing and just playing with it, I ended up really liking it, like way more than I thought I would. And the final product, through short stints, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, it was zero issue with any kind of motion sickness. The motion tracking was awesome. And so the minimum GPU requirements are a GTX 970 class or better and a Radeon R9 290 or better class. So I tested with a 390 and a 970, and then on up to a 980 Ti and a Fury X. And the experience with all of the cards was good. The frame rate might have dropped a little more often with the 970 and 390, but not enough to really say, oh, this stinks. It was good. The only time that I had kind of, a not so great experience is I was, getting close to having to travel, and I needed to finish the article before I left. I didn't want to keep putting it off. I literally spent like a whole day in that thing. I think the longest single stretch was almost 3 hours.
Long time.
I took that thing off, and if you've ever been on a boat all day on choppy waters and you kind of have those sea legs where you feel like you're still moving, I had that and needed to go lay down and just chill out. It completely I was all discombobulated for the rest of the day. Now, in terms of the experience, though, now that it's gone and I had to send it back to HTC, I miss it. I want it. So I think that's the biggest endorsement I can give it is I miss it now that it's gone. Would I spend $800 on it? I probably would if I had it. I don't have $800 to spend on it, but I have the space to set up, a good 10 by 10, 12 by 12 space. I have the you know, a nice home theater downstairs where it would integrate nicely, I would buy it if I had the money. I know it's first gen, and inevitably there's going to be a much better revision probably sooner rather than later. But if you want to experiment with VR and you're excited about it, I say go for it if you have the funds. It's really cool.
Have you guys demoed any VR kits? Brittany,
Google Cardboard.
Yeah, we have that.
We haven't really had a chance to get the nice stuff, but
We have a little Star Wars promo Google Cardboard.
That's awesome.
But I'm glad to hear that they've resolved that motion sickness issue overall, because one of the biggest reasons I would not want to purchase some sort of VR system is I'm the type of person that hops in the car, and if the road gets a little too rough, I'm sick, right? Or going into a theater with 3D, like I can't do those 3D movies. That gives me a headache, it makes me nauseous, and anything that really messes with my eyesight is just a no-go. So I'm glad to hear that they have improved it enough that that wasn't an issue for you by the time you got to that last rendition of it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's not an issue for everybody. If you're that sensitive and a 3D movie makes you woozy, maybe you would actually. So it would have been great actually for someone like you to try it. But I had friends come over. The absolute best person to watch use it was my daughter. I had to put her in the video because she was completely engrossed in this thing. Was jumping up, touching the sky, thinking she's touching things. Just loved it, and it was great to see. And the experience is, in the lead up, I sort of looked at it with my technical geek eyes and saying, oh, it's too heavy, the cable hanging off your head's too clunky, the screen's not high resolution enough because with the optics and the magnification you can see pixels, and all this stuff has to go away before I would even consider it. And then I took off my geek glasses and just played with it for 2 weeks and had people come play with it. And it was just fun. It was cool. It was awesome. And all those little things that I thought would detract just go away if you just sit and enjoy it. And
no, I seem to recall.
Oh, there's the
video.
Yeah, there she is.
There's Izzy.
So it didn't fit her head perfectly. Obviously, she's a little too small for the headset. But man, she loved that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what demo was she doing there?
That's a demo called The Blue. And there's 3 different kind of sections in there. The one she's doing, I forget what it was called, but like there's pink jellyfish and sea turtles come up to you. There was another one where I mentioned it in the article. I don't remember the names. Where you sort of use the Vive controllers as flashlights, and another one where this big giant blue whale comes swimming by you, and you're on a sunken ship. So what you're seeing on the screen is what she's seeing inside the headset.
Oh.
And she's trying to grab at the jellyfish and stuff. She loves everything that has to do with the ocean, so this was kind of tailor-made for her. So when she's home and she's drawing pictures, she's drawing Finding Nemo and octopuses and all that stuff, so she loves the sea. She really dug it.
Look at her. That thing, like, engulfs her whole head.
So at this point in the video, she actually says, "It's like a dream come true," or something like that. It was so funny.
Yeah, no, good stuff. And that you're right. It has kid written all over it. I mean, it's just obviously, we can think of lots of things for adults, lots of gaming, and certain very practical use cases of VR.
Oh yeah, and some not so practical use cases that might be fun. No, just kidding.
What did you say?
And some not so practical stuff that might be fun in VR.
You're bad.
Yes, I am.
But like a kid, and especially some of the demos. Like you showed another demo where you were just like punching dots that were coming at you in the air to the beat of the music.
Yep.
It's really cool. And the other thing that is great about VR is that now you're not just sitting on your butt. I mean, I did the bullet train demo.
True.
Yeah, I did the bullet train demo in an Oculus booth one time. Excuse me, a booth. And I was actually, ducking and shooting at guys and kind of, hustling around a little bit in this little room, trying not to bump into walls. But by the time I got done, I kind of almost broke a sweat. I'm like, well,
I think it's interesting. It reminds me so much of when the Nintendo Wii first launched. Yes. People were very critical of it. The sensors weren't quite accurate, and who's going to get up and move around their room to play the games? And then it ends up being one of, if not the best-selling console of all time ever.
Yeah.
just kind of that kind of innovation and the immersion that people really do want. And when you make it natural enough, which it seems like we're getting there now with VR,
yeah, definitely.
I do think it's going to explode. And I'm not someone who's sitting here like waiting excited for VR either.
Yeah, yeah.
And definitely aimed at children as well. I mean, with that, you know, the Wii remotes and stuff like that, those really were huge Christmas presents, right, for several years. So this, you know, seems very similar.
Yeah, yeah. Is PlayStation VR out yet?
No, not yet.
No.
I've seen it at a number of shows. You know, folks, you know, in a booth with 8 or 10 of them. So I mean, they've had it out on demo in the public a lot, and I think that's got a real shot as well.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about an install base that can run this thing, and of course, you know, Sony's going to kick out a goosed up version of the PlayStation 4 to help spur that as well. I think that's where you could see it get really pervasive in the home as well once Sony gets that out the door.
Right, and I don't think VR lives and dies by having the most realistic graphics. If you can have a good experience, if you keep the frame rates high enough that you don't get the flickering and stuttering, and you have a convincing, even cartoony environment, it can still be excellent.
Yeah, yeah. No, and we've talked about this before, and I think they're going to get there. Marco, you and I have chatted about this, and when we talk to the major players, whether it be NVIDIA, Intel, whoever, AMD, in terms of the hardware, the sort of the holy grail, I think, for this thing is 4K resolution or higher than 1080p, because when you have those pixels right up to your eye, you can discern them if you stop. So it breaks the immersion a little bit. It's nothing earth-shattering. It doesn't totally break the experience, but you notice it, especially if you're a geek like us. 4K wireless, 90 hertz, okay, without the tether hanging off the back of your neck. Once you get that, oh my God, it's like we're all done,
I'd say you need 8K wireless, 120 hertz.
Really? 8?
Yeah, to make it like insanity. Yes, like where it's perfect and you don't want to get
That's a lot of bits to push wirelessly.
Yeah, exactly.
If we could just get the price down, that would be great.
Yeah, and that too, and make it more affordable.
So next year's NUC will be
challenging. What's that, Chris?
So next year's NUC will be able to run it.
Yeah. I was going to say we're just challenging all the semiconductor manufacturers with defying the laws of physics right now, please. Okay.
No, but that's a good thing. It's a good thing because for years, everyone thought everything was processors are good enough, and even cheap GPUs are good enough for 1080p, and blah blah blah, and nobody was looking past hard drives, and now we have NVMe drives doing multi-gigs a second, and all of that is going to get taxed if VR takes off, and they keep pushing the envelope, and we need that because from how many generations has Intel not really boosted IPC, and how many generations has it been where AMD hasn't even tried to catch Intel in terms of IPC and CPU performance. Now you're going to have to kick it up if you're going to want to make it into any of these systems.
Yeah.
So
come on, Zen, do something.
Yeah, absolutely. We're rooting for everybody in this gig. It keeps us busy, and yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's great to have these new use cases that demand more power, more MOAR. All right, let's wrap this up because we're getting close to our limit. Marco, though, we're going to be playing Santa again very soon. We just got through closing up a contest with the folks at Killer and MSI. Tell us about that, and then what's to come, maybe.
Yeah, so we for everyone waiting on their motherboards, we picked the winners last night. We're just hashing out a couple details on one or two of them, and I should be able to post those up today. I will let you know. And to follow that up, our sponsors of this podcast, Lenovo, are going to come through with not one, not two, but 3 systems that we're going to give away. 3 different types of systems. That's also still being hashed out. But stay tuned to Hot Hardware. We're going to have another giveaway very soon, potentially in the next few days. There will be 3 winners and 3 systems going out, most likely. You will not be disappointed. It's going to be very cool. And we're going to keep it super simple like all our giveaways. Just participate, make some friends, contribute to the conversations on the site, and you will just, be entered, and we'll randomly pick a winner, assuming you've liked our pages on Facebook and.
Of course.
Exactly.
Pick all those social media links.
Yeah. Exactly. And you can find us all over the web. We're at hothardware.com. We, of course, that's the place where we hang out in our domicile, as they say, our domain. YouTube.com/hothardware vids, Facebook.com/hothardware, Twitter.com/hothardware, and Google Plus. We're on there too. Britt, Chris, what do you have to say here as we close up? Any parting words of wisdom for the weekend? What are you guys up to? Anything exciting?
We actually smells for you.
Oh, nice.
These are coming through the works.
Do you want me to hold the other one? And this.
And I gotta say, I actually love all of these. Even I had honestly never heard of Tesoro before, but it's been a very impressive.
That one's my favorite.
It's been a very impressive little mouse. Definitely not the highest end one here, but a very good effort.
So you're playing with gaming mice this weekend? Is that the highlight of your weekend?
I'm also going fishing
Oh, yeah, I'm going fishing Sunday.
at a New England camp for the first time.
Nice. You guys are up in you're up in Maine. Are you in like God's country, Maine?
Almost.
Not Bangor. The
Bangor
last stop
area.
before.
Yeah.
Well, that's still kind of hip country, Maine.
Yeah, it's the last stop before the county, as they call it.
Gotcha. Yeah, we try and keep folks hooked on the technology here, which keeps them inside. But do go outside and see that big round yellow thing in the sky once in a while. It's good for you. Marco, any parting words before we sign off?
Yeah, come by the site. There's way more on the site than what we talk about in the podcast. Dozens of news posts every day, tons of feature articles. Definitely like our Facebook pages. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We want to boost the number of subscribers because we're cool and we make awesome videos, and you guys like tech, so like us there. And enjoy this day. There's a nice day out there, so I'm going to get this podcast posted and get outside myself.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch you in the next one.